You'd hear what the Republicans said, you'd hear what the Democrats said, and you even heard about what some independents had to say about it. And then you could make your own decision. Today, not true anymore. Why? Because today, advertisers want to only advertise on the news stations that have drama. To be drama means you cannot give all sides. You have to only give the side that's the most controversial, that will drum up the most ratings. So television is now fully biased. If you think otherwise, you are incorrect. I've been in the media long enough to tell you it is biased. Now some people say, oh, well, we know that if we want conservative show, we watch Fox News. And if we want liberal show, we watch CNN. Okay, they're both liberal shows. I'm just telling you that right now. The difference is Fox does what's called a straw man position on their news, which gives you the thought or the perspective that it's conservative. CNN gives the far left wing, so it looks like you got liberal and you got left wing, and therefore it looks like conservative and liberal. Are you following me?
Yeah.
There is fundamentalists, there are conservatives, there are liberals, and there's left-wingers or progressives. Ideally, the news should show both the conservative and liberal, and we would all be happy because we know both sides of the coin. That's not what's happening. They shift over here, and they're saying this is the conservative side, and this is the liberal side. And it's not true. This is the liberal side, and this is the whacked out far left side. That's the problem. Okay, so you have to teach your kids about that bias. What I do to compensate is I try and find out what Australia says, I try and find out what England says, I try to find out what other countries say about different things to try and understand what's really happening in the United States. Well, you know, when I was growing up, Russia was the only country that used propaganda. Then I got older and found out, oh my gosh, we use propaganda better than the Russians because no one knows we're using propaganda. So discuss moment before the event you see on TV and the moment after. Very, very important. If you're seeing a news story, and this is true of dramas too. If you're watching a drama, you can explain it that way too, but I'll stay on the news topic for now. If you're watching something about Trump, for instance, and then all of a sudden it cuts away to something else, but it seems like it's still part of the same story, the fact that it cut away tells you that someone purposely changed the storyline. You have to tell your kids that. They have to know someone purposely changed the storyline. You can debate about whether it was for the good or for the bad. That's up to you guys to decide. But someone did purposely change the storyline, so don't pretend it was any other way. First time I learned about this, I was at college. I was working at ABC in the evenings while I went to school in the morning. At that time, I wasn't yet a director. I was doing what was called the Chiron. I was putting the words up on screen that you saw during the news program. That's what I was doing back then. And I got to see the satellite feed of something that happened down at the border. We've all heard about there's an issue between the United States and Mexico at the border. Well, I was in college back when I first started hearing about those issues. I saw something that just blew me away, and I thought, oh my gosh, how awful. But I didn't do anything about it or say anything about it to anyone. I just thought, wow, that's awful. That night at the news, after the show was edited, I'm doing the live words on the screen, and now I watch the clip, and you see a police car just slowly pulling up along these Mexicans that are picketing, and the police car is just rolling slowly along, and then it cuts to a shot of the Mexicans flipping over the police car with the cops inside and smashing into the windows. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. I don't want to use up your whole. We're almost done, so I'll run down the hall. But thank you, that was so generous of you. Thank you. So when I saw the news report, I thought, okay, all of America just saw that a police car calmly came alongside of the protesters, and the protesters banged on the hood and windshield, flipped the car over, and started kicking at the car. What message does that send Americans? These protesters are terrible. What I saw before it was edited was the police car using its bumper to push the crowd back. It knocked the little boy over. He fell flat on the ground, and the car rolled over the boy. The guys yelled to have him back up. The cops refused, so they flipped the car and got the little boy out. But America never saw that. So, if you see a cut in the sequence during the news, someone purposely altered the story. Make sure your kids know that. Whether it's what's happening before or after, you have to be thinking, the clip that they're showing is to get their message across, not to tell me the facts of the news. What might have happened before that moment? What might have happened after that moment? Get your kids figuring that out and searching on the news and the internet to see what will support it. Okay, educate them on the genre. Every genre has different things that are always built into it. Horror films have changed over the years. Horror films used to be laughable. Now they're actually scary. Sometimes they're startling. Sometimes they're gross. You have to decide, how do I explain this to my kids so they know if they're going to watch a horror film, which kind they're going to watch. And I say horror film, whether you want a horror film or not. A lot of kids are into horror right now. That's what I'm talking about that. Also, other genres too. For instance, the faith-based genre that I mentioned earlier, the religious category. There's actually two different kinds of films. There's what's called the faith-based, and there's what's called the redemptive story. The redemptive story is like the rags to riches, or the person overcomes something. Those are fantastic stories. Most of the faith-based stories, the story is just preaching their viewpoint at you nonstop, and it's not really a story. So if your kid knows the differences, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to avoid all religion, well, no. There's some out there that are healthy and are good. So you need to have a good handle on what the different genres are. Then discerning the beats in the show, we don't have time for that. But basically, every show has a beginning, a middle, and end. Every show has two turning points, a midpoint, a climax, an inciting incident, on and on and on it goes. I wish I had time to tell you at least the basics of that today. But if you figure out what elements are in a story, your child will know when it comes to the dark night of the soul moment in the movie, where the filmmaker's trying to make them sad on purpose. Do filmmakers do that? Yes, of course we do. We're supposed to put you on a roller coaster ride of emotions, so that you say, wow, that was a fun, exciting movie, because your emotions went like this during the whole film. Those are all purposeful. So make sure your kids at least understand that there's formulas that are being used to drive their emotion and their opinion. And last, help them to practice decision making. Give them something to work with where they can start exploring the kinds of things that they like, the kinds of things that are good for them, the kind of things that are bad for them, the kind of things that seem to be talked about in the community and why. You know, when Game of Thrones was being talked about by a gazillion people, a lot of kids felt left out if they weren't watching it. But a lot of kids were too young for the rating to be watching it. So those kinds of social standards have to be discussed from a parental standpoint. And because we're running out of time, I'm going to ask Lamont to join me up here, and we're just going to open this up for, well, I'm sorry we don't have time for our last segment, but we're just going to open it up in the last 5 minutes here for you to ask either one of us any questions you want. Who's got the first question? Okay, you can't ask him where he bought those shoes. I'm sorry. Okay, what's your question?
The question is, like, for us, like, because we are not from here, so we don't know about the show. You mentioned that, I mean, if even though I can watch with Frank and Mark, like Frank is 15 years old, Mark is 11 years old, even though I can sit there, watch with them, but still, I probably don't understand that. So how, as parents from other countries, like doing the parenting, like for the social media, especially for TV show or my like YouTube.
Right.
Well, I see a lot of kids like Mark, my younger son. He's watching YouTube a lot, but I don't know. What is good for him, or what is bad.
That is a great point. I had mentioned Movie Guide and Focus on the Family earlier. Those are two organizations that do like ratings type things and talk about what's in a film. The one gets into detail, says, okay, you'll see a man's butt, you'll see smoke coming out of his nostrils. It gets that picky, so that helps you a little bit. But here's the thing: when I was growing up, there were a maximum of 400 movies made every year. This last year, 2019, there was 5,000 shows made. That's a huge difference. How can anybody police that many shows? So it's almost impossible today. However, I would Google a bunch of review programs. I would find as many companies as you can that do reviews, find out which ones you like or agree with, or which ones speak to your culture, whatever it might be that you can relate to, and see if you can't take advantage of their material. That's the only thing I can recommend right now. Otherwise, Lamont and I might just have to start a YouTube show that talks about good shows for parents to let their kids watch.
Yeah. I got a very specific question to ask you. Like, I have two boys. They are in this. They're 10 and 8. Somebody is supposed to be teacher based, but they don't like watch movie a lot, but they like watch YouTube channels a lot, especially the YouTube channels that talks about Minecraft tips.
Oh my God.
So I try sit down watching together with them. The topic is, I have no problem with that, Minecraft. There's no violence, not so violence in it, and it's fun, but it's the YouTuber's language that kind of makes me uncomfortable, because it's not that he's using like F words or something, but he's using a lot of like exaggerated expressions, like, oh my God, look at the something. I was like, what do you learn from that? I hope my kids could grow up decently and talk, use beautiful vocabulary, but the topic is so popular among the peers, you cannot say, hey Jacob, turn off the TV, let's switch the topic. So for that scenario, do you have any examples? Do you have any suggestions? Like, should I make them watch one National Geography and then watch a channel?
I like that idea, actually. Do you want to speak to that first?
So as you were saying that, I was thinking I have two daughters, 15 and 17, and a lot of times what's happening is YouTube.
Yeah, that's small.
Everything, they're called memes. I'll turn to my expert.
Yes.
Okay, they're called memes. So memes are the way that they are getting bursts of information in very short bursts, and they actually are sharing them with each other. Hey, come here, let me show you this, let me show you this. A lot of so there is no magic answer in my opinion, especially as they get older. At 15, a lot of it is, why do you watch that? Tell me what you guys get from that. A lot of times the answer I'll get, it's funny. It's funny. There are some times that I'm learning that the kids nowadays, they just want a break from what they're used to. Mine have very rigorous schedules, study. My daughter's in drama club, she does art. Sometimes she watches those just to decompress. There is nothing that gets into her mind subliminally, not that I know of, but now that you said this, I got to rethink that whole thing. But ideally, you do have to at least engage them in conversation. What is it that you get from it? Sometimes they may say, you know what, I know it's stupid, but it's funny and I just need to laugh. Other times you want to watch, if you hear certain things, I'm always conscious. What do I hear? Because sometimes they do say certain things and it's like, okay, what is that? What is that? And at times you have to step in and say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with that. And if you have the relationship with your children, that you give them a little bit of flexibility, that when you